Hey guys, welcome back to episode 2 of the Best Movie Podcast. Last week I called the podcast the Worst Movie Podcast, but you know what? I'm starting to realize, why am I selling myself short here? I'm not that bad. I thought last week I did a good job, so I'm changing the name after one episode. This is going to be the Best Movie Podcast. Let's just jump right into it. I have random news articles from Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Twitter, whatever, and I'm going to be giving my thoughts on them. For some reason, Tarantino was all over the news this week. The guy's just running his mouth, getting himself into trouble, just spitting facts, and I agreed with everything he's said. So from the top, Tarantino-related article number 1, Tarantino's making a TV show. Tarantino announces all the time that he's going to make 10 movies and that's it, that's all, no more after that. So Tarantino is starting to venture into other avenues, I guess. He said he's making an 8-episode series. I want to speculate, what can this TV show be? In my head, if he made Bounty Law a TV show with DiCaprio, that'd be pretty jokes. Or if he made something along those lines. One thing's for sure though, if Tarantino does make an 8-episode series, I would want it to be very serialized, and I would want it to feel very TV. Tarantino, his movies feel very cinematic. Kill Bill is an homage to Kung Fu movies. Death Proof is an homage to B movies. Inglourious Bastards is those Man on a Mission war movies. If Tarantino is going to make the jump to TV, I want him to pay tribute to TV. I want him to make something like a sitcom, or something like a serialized western, or something along those lines. I think it would be really cool. But I don't want it to feel too gimmicky. I still want it to feel Tarantino-y. I want it to have that legitimacy to it. So yeah, that was the first Tarantino article. I don't think anyone's too upset over that. That's not what got people's panties in a bunch. The first thing he said that got people's panties in a bunch was, he said, we are living in one of the worst eras for movies. And I've heard him say this before. This isn't the first time he says this. But for some reason, I kept getting articles about it. Is he right? Is he wrong? I can see where he's getting at, and I would agree with him. I don't think this is nearly as bad as the 50s, though. And I don't think it's as bad. It's pretty bad. Depends. The mainstream movies are definitely the worst era. I'm seeing a lot of underground movies that are really good, though, or indie movies that are really good. Triangle of Sadness, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Tar, all really good movies. I don't think it's as bad as the 50s. But I get what he is saying, though. It feels very sanitized. It's been a while since I've seen a movie that really shocked me or really made me feel uncomfortable. You know, let me just pull up a random year. Random year off the top of my head, 1979. So let's look at the movies that came out in the year 1979. So 1979 movies. We got Stalker, very cool movie. Apocalypse Now. Hair, which is a cult classic. The Warriors, another cult classic. Phantasm, another cult classic. Kramer vs. Kramer, which won the Oscar. Nosferatu the Vampire, which I talked about on my channel. The Brood, great movie. Alien, great movie. Star Trek The Motion Picture. I've never seen it. I'm not a big Trekkie, not gonna lie. Escape from Alcatraz. James Bond Moonraker, one of the best James Bond movies. The original Mad Max. Life of Brian. The Muppets movie, the first Muppets movie. Meatballs. What else do we have from 1979? There's a remake of All Quiet on the Western Front from 1979. I didn't know that. Manhattan from Woody Allen, great movie. Quadrophenia, which is the movie by The Who. So lots of good movies came out in the year 1979. Being There. I can keep going, I guess. Let's pick another random year. Let's say 1988. Beetlejuice, Young Guns, Dead Ringers, They Live, Last Temptation of Christ, Rain Man, Scrooged, Big, Die Hard, Grave of the Fireflies, The Naked Gun, Hairspray, My Neighbor Totoro. I think Evil Dead 2 came out that year off the top of my head. The remake of The Blob, Child's Play, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Good Morning Vietnam, Coming to America, Moonstruck, Three Men and a Baby. Alright, maybe that one wasn't so good. You can see there's a lot of good movies from the year 1988. Very, what would be considered mid-budget movies of this time. Let's go one more. 1996. Independence Day, the original Mission Impossible, The Rock, A Time to Kill, Ransom, Fargo, From Dusk Till Dawn, Mars Attacks, Stephen King's Thinner, I reviewed that one on my channel, Swingers, Romeo and Juliet, the one with Leo DiCaprio, Jerry Maguire, Cable Guy, which is a cult classic, Scream, the original one. What I'm getting at is, like, when you do that for a year like let's say 2020, you're gonna get nothing but franchise movies. It feels like this generation has a lot less of an identity, and I think that's the most frustrating part. I don't want people to look back on this generation and be like, oh yeah, the defining movies of the 2020s, and it was Marvel movies. It kind of is like an identity crisis thing. To me, the Marvel generation was like 2010 to Endgame 2019, and that was perfect. Right now, it's like we're just getting the tail end of it, and I'm a little fed up of it, and I really don't want that trend to go on. I also saw Tarantino on Bill Maher talk about how there's like this kind of Red Scare climate going on now. How people were being ousted as being communists during the Cold War. People now are being ousted as racists or homophobes or bigots in this era, and that leads to film being a lot less risk-taking in the same way that film was very sanitized in the 1950s, and I think that's a correct assessment. So, yeah, Tarantino said something, people got upset, I agree with him. Speaking of which, last one is Tarantino's thoughts on movie stars. Tarantino says, and I'll pull up the real quote here, you have all these actors who become famous playing these characters, but Captain America is the star. Thor is the star. So he's basically implying that people are not going to the theater to see Chris Evans. People are going to the theater to see Captain America. I'm going to read it in his voice, okay? So, you have these actors, right? Okay, who have become famous for playing these characters, right? But Captain America's the star, right? Not Chris Evans, you know? Thor is the star, right? You know? Not Chris Hemsworth. You're going to see Thor, right? Which is 100% accurate. If you look at Robert Downey Jr.'s recent movies, people loved him as Iron Man. And Robert Downey Jr. is a fantastic actor, in my opinion, very charismatic. But he made movies like The Judge, no one saw it. He made movies like Dolittle, crashed at the box office. Look at Chris Hemsworth. He's made movies like Black Hat, which had Michael Mann and starring him. No one went to see it. Even when he was in Men in Black, no one really saw it. No one really cared. Chris Evans, he's been in some good movies. People really like Snowpiercer. And I think Chris Evans is doing a good job now trying to pick those more indie projects. But again, people are going to see Captain America more so than they're going to see Chris Evans. Simu Liu, which some might know as the guy from Kim's Convenience, but he's also a Marvel hero, let's not forget. He took it to Twitter, and he said this: if the only gatekeepers to movie stardom came from Tarantino and Scorsese, I would never have had an opportunity to lead a $400 million plus movie. I am in awe of their filmmaking genius. They are transcendent auteurs, but they don't get to point their nose at me or anyone. No movie studio is or ever will be perfect, but I'm proud to work with one that has made sustained efforts to improve diversity on screen by creating heroes that empower and inspire people of all communities everywhere. I loved the Golden Age too, but it was white as hell. I'm gonna start this off by saying that I've never seen Shang-Chi, and I've seen maybe 2 episodes of Kim Convenience. I am Canadian after all. Anyway, I feel like Simu Liu has a very condescending... he's just a very condescending individual. He's also very passive-aggressive. If I were at Marvel, I would confiscate Simu Liu's Twitter. I feel like he has such a weird demeanor to him. First of all, let's go through this. The first problem I had is I'm proud to work with one that has made sustained efforts to improve diversity. I wouldn't say that Disney made sustained efforts to improve diversity. I think that Disney has a long history of being racist, all the way back to Fantasia and even before that, racist cartoons. I don't think they've always had diversity at the forefront. It's kind of a more recent phenomenon. All of these big major companies like Nike and, I don't know, Taco Bell, they'll all have like a pride thing, or they'll all do a Black Lives Matter thing, but it's more, the reason is more because of the bottom dollar rather than improving diversity on screen. Maybe I'm a little more cynical when it comes to that, but I think that Disney's efforts are more because of profit rather than the ethics behind it. So Simu Liu is kind of just patting Disney on the back, but I wouldn't give them too much credit. Nonetheless, I don't think Tarantino is wrong in what he's saying. And I don't know why Simu Liu had to make it racial. There's nothing very racist about what Quentin Tarantino said, or nothing that's promoting a systemic racist system. Tarantino even used Captain America and Thor as examples, 2 white heroes. But I remember an interview where Anthony Mackie said literally the same thing as what Tarantino is saying here. This isn't an original idea. When you're hired, you're at the service of the character. I think ultimately Simu Liu here is acting a little narcissistic. He should be happy that he gets to service this great Marvel character. Or, I'm not familiar with the Marvel character. I assume it has a great history to it, like most of Stan Lee's comics. But I think that's a good thing. You get to put your stamp on a certain hero. Look at a character like James Bond, where you had people like Roger Moore and Sean Connery and all these people, and they got to service the character of James Bond. Each actor got to put their own stamp on James Bond. And yes, movie stars did play James Bond. I would consider Sean Connery to be a movie star. I would consider... yeah, he's basically the only one of the bunch I'd consider a movie star. But Roger Moore by no means is a movie star. I think people know him as James Bond, but outside of the character, people don't really know Roger Moore. And it's the same thing for Batman. A lot of great actors have played Batman, and then there are actors who are just at the service of the character, like an Adam West, who... Adam West couldn't carry a whole motion picture on his own, but we love him because he put his stamp on Batman in the 1960s. I feel like Simu Liu took it as an insult, but it's not necessarily an insult. There are pros to it and there are disadvantages to it. Ultimately, the problem I have with the Sylvester Stallone era of movies, where people would go to the theater to see a Sylvester Stallone movie or to see the new Schwarzenegger movie, is that Schwarzenegger would always be himself. Stallone would always be himself. That was the main problem I had with that era, is the actors had a certain persona they had to portray. Kind of like when you go see a modern Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson movie these days. There's like a list of criteria that you expect when you go see a Sylvester Stallone movie. And there's a list of criteria you expect when you go to see a Captain America movie or a Batman movie or an Iron Man movie. There's a list of things you expect to see. The main problem that comes here is that when you have a star like Sylvester Stallone in the 80s, he gets to pick up a script like Demolition Man that would never get made, but Sylvester Stallone was such a big star and he got to be in that movie with Wesley Snipes, and then it brought this cool little screenplay to the foreground. and I think Demolition Man is a great movie, and you can shoot me if you disagree with me. I don't give a shit. Actually, I do give a shit. I'd rather not be dead. But even Wesley Snipes, a character like Blade, it wasn't a well-known Marvel character, yet it was one of the first Marvel movies to get made because it had Wesley Snipes' name on it. So that's the main problem when you don't have a movie star-oriented film industry. Now, I do like the idea of actors bringing their stamp to a character and working within the confines of that character. I think that can be interesting as well. I think Simu Liu is ultimately just narcissistic here. He wants to be a movie star. He's basically telling Tarantino, I am a movie star. And I don't get why he had to bring race into the mix. The statement had nothing to do with race. He says, I love the golden age, but let's admit it was white as hell. What does that even mean? It's so far off from what Tarantino was trying to say. Not to mention, too, that Tarantino collaborates quite frequently with Samuel L. Jackson, who is Nick Fury, after all. But I think even Tarantino would admit Sam Jackson is a movie star, but when Sam Jackson plays Nick Fury, 16-year-olds aren't going to see Sam Jackson. They're going to see Nick Fury. That's just the fact of the matter. So I don't get Simu Liu. He needs to get his Twitter confiscated by someone, a loved one, hopefully.
And you have these people like Simu Liu, right? And Simu Liu thinks he's above the character, which is fine, all right? Okay? And I am a genius, right? Okay? So let's look at it this way. Simu Liu, all right, is kind of an asshat, okay? It's just the way the cookie crumbles, all right? It's just the way it is, all right? He's not like Tom Cruise, you know? He's not like the Fonz, all right? Okay? He's not like Burt Reynolds, all right? Okay? It's like there's a difference. You're playing a character. The people want to see Shang-Chi. They don't want to see Simu Liu. But when you go to see a Stallone movie, you want to see Stallone. All right?
Let's move on away from Tarantino. We talked a lot about Tarantino, holy mackerel. But Robert Downey Jr. is making a documentary about Robert Downey Sr. So this is going to come out on Netflix in January. I saw the trailer for it. It kind of looked touching. It kind of looked heartwarming. But Robert Downey Jr. is making a documentary about his father. For those of you who don't know his father, he's a cult filmmaker. I've seen one Robert Downey Sr. I've seen one Robert Downey Sr. film, and it was Putney Swope. And I thought this was such a great movie. It was such a fun little movie. It was so weird and outrageous, and really, really ahead of its time, especially when it came to dealing with topics of racism and all that stuff. Robert Downey Sr. is an interesting cat, and during his last days, he suffered from Parkinson's disease. He passed away maybe 2 years ago from Parkinson's, and Robert Downey Jr. is making this documentary about his father. I hope they go into his cult filmmaking, and I hope that they go into his more troubling behavior. I just don't want to see a puff piece on Robert Downey Sr. I would really like it if Robert Downey Jr. painted a full picture of his father, qualities and shortcomings. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Next, this is interesting as well, but it's been out for a while, but I've never really read about it. But they're making a Dennis Rodman movie. I think Dennis Rodman is probably one of the craziest people ever. He's such an interesting character. I would love to see a movie about Dennis Rodman. And if I made a movie about Dennis Rodman, I'd want it to take place in North Korea, damn it. I want it to be The Interview, but instead of James Franco, it would be Dennis Rodman. That whole situation was such a weird phenomenon. It needs to be made into a movie. As you guys may know, I don't like biopics for the most part. This one, however, seems interesting. It kind of references the Last Dance documentary that came out a few years ago, the one about Michael Jordan, and it's going to take place in what's called the 48-hour bender to Vegas. I didn't see the documentary, but apparently Michael Jordan told the story about how Dennis Rodman needed a vacation because he was staying clean. and he just needed 48 hours to, like, do as many drugs, drink as much alcohol as possible. He was dating Carmen Electra at the time, I believe. He just needed a nice period to just let loose and go crazy, and he was given 48 hours to go to Vegas and have this crazy bender. And the movie is going to be about that 48 hours. What brought this news to the forefront again was that Jonathan Majors is going to play Dennis Rodman. Allegedly, supposedly, he's in the talks. I think it's a great casting choice. I think Jonathan Majors is a really good actor. I think he's a really good actor. I saw him in, what was that Western movie that came out on Netflix? I listen to the soundtrack all the time, but I can't remember the name of the movie for some reason. Had Kid Cudi, Jay-Z, Lauryn Hill. Jeez, what was it fucking called? The Harder They Fall. There we go. The Harder They Fall, which I actually thought was a good movie, despite me forgetting the name for a while. But The Harder They Fall was a great movie. Jonathan Majors was great in it. I really bought him as this cowboy. And I see him in the trailer for this new movie, Creed 3, which apparently he's going to play Mr. T's son, which I don't know if I'm a fan of that. Why does Adonis Creed only face people that Rocky faced? Rocky 2, he was fighting Ivan Drago's son. Now he's going to fight Mr. T's son? Running out of bad guys to fight. What, he's going to fight his brother in the next movie? It needs to be Apollo Creed's son. Oh wait, he is Apollo Creed's son. Well, he's going to fight his brother. I think it's kind of lazy. I hate it in movies when they make the family trees so small. Just introduce new characters. It's like, that's a recurring problem I have with Star Wars, is everyone has to be related. The galaxy is vast. There are plenty of aliens you can fuck in that galaxy far, far away. You can fuck an alien with 8 titties, yet everyone's related. You gotta be a little more adventurous out there, kids. I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. But yeah, I think it's interesting that Jonathan Majors is going to play Dennis Rodman. I think Dennis Rodman is long overdue for a movie. And I'm really happy especially that they're making a biopic where it's not going to start with the birth of Dennis Rodman and then his teenage years and then his years with the Bulls and then his retirement. They're not trying to cover the whole Dennis Rodman story. If the whole movie takes place within that 48-hour period, that'd be great. Or if they decide to change it up and make it about his encounters with Kim Jong, I'd be all for that as well. Maybe a sequel down the line. That would be a great sequel. I want to end this with a pretty long article here, but The Hollywood Reporter made a top 70 Marvel movies. There have been 70 Marvel movies. I have not seen this article from The Hollywood Reporter, but I'm curious. So we're going to check it out. You guys will get my live reaction as I go through this list. Let's take it from the bottom. I'm being redirected to thehollywoodreporter.com. This article is from John D4, Leslie Felprin, and Jordan Mincer. Well, they didn't pick the easiest to pronounce names, but let's go ahead. Man-Thing from 2005. I didn't even know there was a Man-Thing movie. Damn. It's from the director of Lawnmower Man. How have I never heard of this movie? Fuck. Captain America, 1990. I've seen that movie. It's something else. You know, it is what it is. Howard the Duck, I've never seen. Notorious bomb about the duck-billed creature from a faraway galaxy was, one now realizes, a very expensive research project for producer George Lucas's later creation, Jar Jar Binks. Is there any similarity between Howard the Duck and Jar Jar Binks? 67 is Fantastic Four 2015. I watched this movie in the movie theater, and I watched it with my brother because we wanted to laugh at it. It's terrible. It's not even laughably funny. Actually, there's one part that made me laugh at how terrible it was. It's the part where Miles Teller is stretched out. He's like in a laboratory bed or something, and his limbs are all stretched out, and he's looking at his lanky arms, and he's like, ah, ah, ah. I thought that was funny. 66, Elektra. I've never seen it. 65, Fantastic Four, 1994. Damn, they put the Roger Corman as better than the 2015 one. That's a ballsy move. I've never seen the Roger Corman one. 64, Fantastic Four. I think they're just getting rid of all the Fantastic Four movies right off the bat. I don't think the first Fantastic Four movie is that bad. I definitely don't think that the Tim Story movies are that bad. I feel like there's a lot worse Marvel movies out there. I think Rise of the Silver Surfer is better than the first one because Lawrence Fishburne played the Silver Surfer. I just think they're fun kids movies. Nothing more. I know that around this time period, comic book movies started getting elevated to think that 3 years later, The Dark Knight would come out. So I just feel like the audience was kind of not into this movie because it was something of the past. It was something that the superhero genre outgrew. I understand it. For what it is, I don't think that these movies, the Tim Story Fantastic Four movies, are that terrible. The Punisher, 1989. That's the one with Dolph Lundgren, I guess. 62, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. I have a soft spot for this movie just because I love Neville Dean and Taylor. They're really good filmmakers, and the stunts in this movie are pretty good. It was a fucking horrible movie, though. It was so bad. I remember the trailer was pretty good, too, though, because the trailer had... the kid is talking with the Ghost Rider, and the kid asks, "Can you pee when you're the Ghost Rider?" And Nick Cage just says, "Oh yeah, it's easy." And he pees fire in the next shot. Yeah, I have a soft spot for Ghost Rider too. I thought it was 61, Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Talked about it. 60, Ghost Rider. The CG on the first Ghost Rider really didn't age well, but there are some good Nick Cage freak out moments. It's what it is. I think I just have a soft spot for those early comic book movies that just didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone involved with this movie, they never cracked open a Ghost Rider book. 59, Daredevil, that's one I actually defend. And I think it's because I watched the director's cut, or whatever that one was called, the editor's cut. I don't think that Daredevil movie is that bad. I think there's worse shit out there. Like, the Halle Berry Catwoman movie is way worse than the Daredevil movie, but people always put them in the same sentence. I thought Ben Affleck sucked as Daredevil, though. But it had this really cool gothic-y feel. I like the shots of Ben Affleck kind of being in the devil pose wrapped around the angel statue. I liked the CG in it for its time. It worked. Next, Punisher Warzone. I've actually never seen that one. 57, Punisher. Never seen that one. 56, Blade Trinity. Never seen it. 55, X-Men The Last Stand. It really had a cool premise to that movie, but it was just such a terrible movie. And fucking CG Professor Xavier is terrifying. He looks like a baby. X-Men The Last Stand is pretty bad. X-Men Origins Wolverine. I will say that X-Men The Last Stand is better than X-Men Origins Wolverine. I think X-Men Origins Wolverine is by far and away the worst X-Men movie. They just tried to cram so much in that movie. Did you just call me Blob? And then there was like Will.i.am in the movie. Logan. I don't know. That was a bad one. 53, Morbius. See, to me, Morbius is way worse than Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and it's way worse than Daredevil. I think there's no excuse for a movie like Morbius to exist. I think it's 52, Blade. That's gonna piss some people off. I reviewed Blade recently. It didn't age that well, that's for sure. Let's see what they have to say. But the horror action hybrid made enough cash to earn 2 sequels, blah blah blah. Hardly, they don't really review it at all. Fuck it. 51, Spider-Man 3. I don't agree. I don't agree. I think Spider-Man 3 is underrated. Yes, Venom is shoehorned in, but everything about Sandman is great in the movie. Everything with Harry Osborn was okay in the movie, minus the amnesia plot. I thought emo Peter Parker was hilarious. Even before it was a meme, I kept defending emo Peter Parker. I don't think Spider-Man 3 is that bad. There's some really great moments in it, and a lot of people say that there's too much going on in the movie, which I agree to a certain extent, but here are my two counter-arguments. Firstly, the character of Peter Parker is always a character that has too much on his plate, and there's always like so much going on in his mind, and Spider-Man 1 and 2 explore that, but Spider-Man 3 really makes you feel that. Now, whether or not that was unintentional or intentional, I'll let you guys decide that. But I really got to feel like the Spider-Man guy really has too much on his plate. This is what it must feel like. Secondly, when you look at comic book movies nowadays, I feel like there's so much more going on compared to Spider-Man 3. Now, Spider-Man 3 has its shitty subplots. I'm not saying that, but in terms of quantity, I feel like some superhero movies have a lot more going on. It's just right now, audiences are more accustomed to it. 50, The New Mutants, I skipped out on it. 49, Dark Phoenix, I also skipped out on it. 48, Thor The Dark World. Come on. Thor The Dark World is not better than Spider-Man 3. Let's get real here. That was such a bad movie. You want to hear a funny story about that movie, Thor? I went to see it with a lady. When did this movie come out? 2013. And so I must have been maybe 15 when the movie came out. 14 or 15. And I was watching the movie, and she wrapped her leg around my leg. But I was such a cinephile at the time. I was like, what are you doing? I'm trying to watch a movie here. Stop trying to make moves on me. It's not the time or place. I take my cinematic experiences very seriously. So I just like waggled my leg so she can get her leg off my leg. That's such a Sigma move looking back. The Amazing Spider-Man 2. No way is The Amazing Spider-Man 2 better than Spider-Man 3. So The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is one of the worst movies ever made. That one is overstuffed. That one is overstuffed. Fucking Rhino? Pwah! That was a disgusting. And there's this whole subplot that Sally Field, Aunt May, she was like, oh, I got a job at the infirmary. I'm gonna be a nurse again. It was like so useless. 46 Venom. Bleh, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. There's some fun moments. I like it when Tom Hardy eats a live lobster. Other than that, I don't even remember the fucking movie. This one is truly sinful. This one is truly sinful. "45, Iron Man 3. I will defend Iron Man 3 to the death. Iron Man 3, in fact, is my favorite Marvel movie. MCU movie, that is. I think it's the best of the MCU movies. And don't get mad. Don't get mad. I think it's the best one. Here's the reason why. People will say, oh, Doctor Strange 2, that felt like a Sam Raimi movie. Didn't feel like a Sam Raimi movie. Guardians of the Galaxy, that felt like a James Gunn movie. I liked Guardians of the Galaxy a lot. Didn't feel like a James Gunn movie to me. A little bit, in some moments, absolutely. When Lloyd Kaufman pops up in the movie, it did feel like a James Gunn movie. Other than that, wasn't too James Gunny. Thor Ragnarok, that felt like a Taika Waititi movie. Yeah, a bit. Not that much. Iron Man 3 is the most director-focused movie of the MCU. That one has the most auteurship to it. Some of the movies, they feel like factory products. Some of them, they feel like the director had a little say, but it wasn't completely them. Iron Man 3 feels like 100% a Shane Black movie. You watch a movie like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, The Nice Guys, Lethal Weapon, the original Predator. Feels a lot like that movie. I think that's the reason why I like it. Also, obviously, it goes without saying, the character of Tony Stark is really a really good character. I think in Iron Man 1 and 2, especially Iron Man 2, he was a bit too dickish to the point where I'm like, dude, you're not even fun to hang out with. He was kind of just like that annoying bro that's like really into alcohol, and you're just like, dude, you're a bit much right now. Can you just like tone it down a bit? Iron Man 3 strikes the perfect balance. He's still snarky. He calls a kid a pussy at a certain point, but he's not a full-out dick. He's going through an existential crisis, and he's having panic attacks. He's starting to contemplate his role in the universe. I think Iron Man 3 is the deepest of the Marvel movies. It's also a movie about identity. Iron Man, the whole point of the movie is that anyone can be Iron Man, but not everyone can be Tony Stark, which is a cool moral to have. And they have that theme being contrasted by Ben Kingsley's character, who's this Mandarin, who's like, you'll never see me coming. And turns out he's just like a fucking loser in real life. So it really shows that it's not about the hero, it's who's behind the disguise, who's behind the mask. And the one thing I didn't like is Aldrich Killu, whatever his fucking name. Aldrich whatever. He was kind of a lame bad guy. But the whole moment where Tony Stark lands himself in Tennessee and he's in this snowy town and he has to build an Iron Man costume from scratch. There's so many great action moments, like when people are falling off the airplane and Tony Stark has to save them, and it turns out that it was Tony Stark controlling the Iron Man suit remotely. There's this great moment where he's chained up and he's trying to get the gloves to fall in his hands. That was a great moment. The part where he goes to Home Depot and he just gets random supplies and takes out a bunch of people, that was a great moment. And the finale is really cool too, where he has to pick the appropriate costumes. It wasn't just explosion action. It really had a certain something that put you on the edge of your seat. I think Iron Man 3 is criminally low on this list. Oh my god, they put Venom 2 above Iron Man 3? I didn't see Venom 2, I won't judge it. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. That's another one I really like from the MCU. That's probably in my top 4 MCU movies. I think it's better than the first Guardians of the Galaxy, actually, because it's such a slower paced movie, and you really just get to spend time with the characters. And I think that's what I like. And I also think that Ronan in the first movie wasn't all that interesting, but I thought Kurt Russell in the second movie was a lot more interesting. I thought Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was pretty good. X-Men Apocalypse, that movie is awful. That's the next movie, number 42, X-Men Apocalypse. That movie is sheer ass. That's like one of the worst X-Men movies. I can't even remember anything about it. The only thing I remember is they tried to rehash the scene from X-Men Days of Future Past, where Quicksilver runs, and they do it with boom 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 boom. Sweet dreams are made of these. 41. The Hulk from 2003. Yikes. That's a big ouch. That's a big ouch. Number 40, The Incredible Hulk. These guys have to be fucking shitting me. How is The Incredible Hulk better than Guardians of the Galaxy 2? And how is it better than Iron Man 3? I do think that The Incredible Hulk is a little underrated. It really had a lot of gravitas to it. I really like the moments where Edward Norton's stuck in Brazil and he's running on rooftops and shit. It really felt like this guy had a disease, and I think that's something that's lacking from the other MCU Hulk movies, or the ones that have the Hulk anyway. In the Avengers, Mark Ruffalo says that he's always hangry and he can control when the Hulk shows up. But I kind of like that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde-ness of the 2008 Hulk. Something unexpected can always happen. He's like a nuclear weapon. I think the Hulk now is kind of abysmal, though. Fucking Professor Hulk. Dab on it! 39 Black Widow, I've never seen. Probably will never see it. 38 Blade 2? I've never seen Blade 2, I'm not gonna lie. I might have seen it when I was young, but I can't remember anything about it. 37, X-Men First Class. Not the best X-Men movie. Not the worst X-Men movie. It's in the middle. It's good. It's got its moments. What I like most about that era of X-Men, when it was James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender, is they were really acting their asses off. And kudos to them, because Jennifer Lawrence, she didn't take the superhero genre all that seriously, and she kind of started phoning it in after a while. But Michael Fassbender, especially in the X-Men movies, is terrific. James McAvoy as well. But X-Men First Class, it's a bit of an origin movie, nothing special to it. A lot of people love it. I like the 1960s aesthetic. Not much to it. Next, Avengers Endgame. I like Avengers Endgame. It was a big event movie. It's riddled with problems. And I wish the whole movie was time traveling. I didn't like the ending battle. It took up a third of the movie, and I wasn't all that invested in it. Because we just got an ending battle in Infinity War, which kind of felt like a big climactic battle. I feel like if Avengers Endgame was just this time traveling story, like a Back to the Future, I would have been completely okay with it. If that second act was basically the whole plot of the movie, I would have been cool with it. What I really like about Endgame is that we get to see these characters after the blip and just see, like, Thor's fat now and Hulk is, like, partying it up. Iron Man is just like, you know what? I'm going to take a step back and just get a family and live my life. And Captain America is going to these AA meetings. I thought that was the most... Number 35, Thor. The original Thor is not good. It's not a good movie. I respect Sir Kenneth Branagh. Not a perfect movie. Thor with his bleached eyebrows looks terrible. Him doing fish out of water comedy in New Mexico, not really good. The original Thor movie is not that good, let's be real. 34, The Eternals, I've never seen it. 33, Spider-Man Homecoming is probably my favorite of the 3 new Spider-Man movies. Probably my favorite of the Tom Holland movies. I think it's the one that feels the most like a Spider-Man movie when compared to the other two. I like him being in New York. I wish there was him swinging in New York a bit more. I wish I kind of had more of those moments. But the scene where they pay tribute to Ferris Bueller and he's running through backyards, and I really liked it. And I really like Michael Keaton as the Vulture in those movies. And I like that there was this twist that the girl he was dating so happens to be Michael Keaton's daughter. That was perfect. The great moments in Spider-Man Homecoming. I think it's a lot better than the other 2 Spider-Man movies. 32, Thor Love and Thunder. I haven't seen it yet, nor will I ever see it. It kind of looked bad. 31, this is going to piss people off. 31, Avengers Infinity War. Whoo! Yikes. I don't know. I went to see this movie, and I was supervising a field trip. This was back when I worked in a high school. I was supervising a field trip, and I just remember when that ending happened, you can fucking hear a pin drop in that theater. A pin drop. Next, Shang-Chi. I've never seen it. 29, The Wolverine. I don't think it's that good. I don't like The Wolverine. It's got its fans. I'm not one of them. The Wolverine is not that good. 28, Iron Man 2. Huh? Iron Man 2 is better than Spider-Man Homecoming? It's better than Infinity War? It's better than Endgame? It's better than Iron Man 3? Iron Man 2 is better than Iron Man 3? I'm starting to sound like Tucker Carlson right now. What is going on? What is happening? When are we gonna fight back? That was my Tucker Carlson impression. Yeah, it's pretty bad. I do like the villain that's played by Sam Rockwell. That was pretty fun. It was just a mess of a movie, trying to set up too many things. It kind of felt like a long ad for the Avengers. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. It's not a good movie. I don't know why it's that high on the list. 28, Iron Man 2. I just remember that really cringe scene where they're fighting and Another One Bites the Dust is playing. And this is when I feel like Disney started putting their stamp on the MCU, because there's a deleted scene that had Tony Stark puking in a toilet because he was drunk. And this would have happened as the opening scene, so right before he does the tech demo thing, whatever he does, whatever they call those, the showings. So he was drunk before, but they cut that scene out. And I really wish they went into Tony Stark's alcoholism. That would have been really interesting. Instead, they make it so that his heart is not working anymore. That's the disease, not his alcoholism. I don't know. Next, X-Men Days of Future Past. I love X-Men Days of Future Past. X-Men Days of Future Past, everyone was creaming their shorts over Spider-Man No Way Home. They have all the Spider-Mans in one movie. And when I was watching that movie, I was just like, this is like a worse version of X-Men Days of Future Past. Because X-Men Days of Future Past had the old people interacting with the young people, and it really was a fucking awesome movie. It really was, and it really was emotional. Something about it felt very Shakespearean. When James McAvoy is face to face with his older self, and he says, "I don't want your future. I don't want you suffering." That was my James McAvoy impression. I thought that was a great scene. There's so much emotion in the movie. It was really a well done time travel story. You had Hugh Jackman's Wolverine in it. You had Quicksilver, did a great job. This was Jennifer Lawrence back when she gave a shit about playing Mystique. Magneto, both of them, Ian McKellen, Michael Fassbender. It was just a very well-told story, and I find myself rewatching X-Men Days of Future Past a lot. It's a really good superhero movie. 26, The Amazing Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man is a bad movie. It's cringe. I know there's like this new love for Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man because of No Way Home. He wasn't given much to do in his own movies. We can all admit it. This came out around the time that Dark Knight was popular, and this came out the same summer as Dark Knight Rises. And I feel like they tried to make Spider-Man too dark. But meanwhile, he's fighting a giant lizard dude. It didn't make sense. I didn't like Amazing Spider-Man. 25, Thor Ragnarok. It's aight. It's aight. It's aight. I don't have any recollection of watching it. Something about it was really forgettable. But it was aight, you know. Spider-Man No Way Home, 24. I didn't like Spider-Man No Way Home. Is that the one with Doc Ock? Yeah, it is. No, that's the Europe one. I get them all mixed up. Fuck. 2021, okay. Spider-Man No Way Home is the one with Doc Ock. Yeah, it was aight. I didn't really love it. It was pretty bad in my opinion. Again, going back to X-Men Days of Future Past, if you're gonna do like the two worlds collide thing, do it like X-Men Days of Future Past. There was a lot more emotion to it. I felt like this movie was very sloppy. It just bounced around way too much. It felt like a Reddit fan film. You know what'd be funny? If Willem Dafoe says, I'm something of a scientist myself. I didn't really like Spider-Man No Way Home. 23, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Hot damn, is that a dumb take. That's an L take, bro. This movie is a disaster. It was awful. I didn't see it in theaters. My friend had Disney Plus and he wants to watch it, and I was like, sure, I'll fucking watch it with you. We were watching it, and this other person we were with, he used to be in the military, and he was watching the movie, and he was Quebecois, and he was like, so what is in this book? What is this book that they're trying to get? Okay, and what is Doctor Strange's power? He can do a teleportation, and that's his superpower. So why can he? What is the laser around his arms? And then he fell asleep like 20 minutes into the movie. It was just a bad movie. And this is coming from the biggest Sam Raimi fan ever. I just fucking defended Spider-Man 3. I think Spider-Man 3 is a better movie than Doctor Strange 2. Take it as you will. I don't give a fuck. Doctor Strange 2 was bad. Made 0 sense, no emotion to it. Next, 22, Spider-Man Far From Home. That's gonna upset some people, that Far From Home is higher than Homecoming and No Way Home. Jeez, they really need to come up with different titles for these movies. It was alright. 21, Deadpool. There we go. That's a quality movie. I liked it when he did National Women's Day. I think 20 for Deadpool is a good spot. 21, sorry, for Deadpool is a good spot. 20, Deadpool 2. You know what? I'm going to give this list some props. After grilling it for hours, Deadpool 2 is a better movie than Deadpool 1. The cinematography is better. The action is on point. I love the opening where they're playing Dolly Parton and he's going around slicing and dicing people. It just felt more like Deadpool would feel like. It was just more violent, which I like. And I think there's even a part where Josh Brolin drops a C-bomb, which I always like a good C-bomb in a movie. 19, Guardians of the Galaxy. I like it. Again, I prefer Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 is good. It's a fun time. I really felt the family dynamic in this group of misfits. It's a fun time. 18, Captain America the First Avenger. It's alright. They got the director of The Rocket Man to do the movie. It felt like The Rocket Man a bit. I say a bit because it was really a bit. I saw it in theaters. I liked it in theaters. It's a fun kind of World War II serial film. It's not 18. It's a fun time. It's not 18. Better than Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2. Better than Iron Man. Better than Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. Better than Spider-Man 3? Okay, come on now. I don't know. 17, Big Hero 6. I didn't even consider that a Marvel movie, but I guess technically it is. Yeah, it's alright. Nothing special. 16, Avengers Age of Ultron. Come on now. These guys are fucking with us. This is an ultimate troll. Avengers Age of Ultron better than Infinity War and Endgame? It sometimes felt like a hangout movie focused on figuring out how these unthinkably powerful heroes could share a room without their supercharged egos destroying space-time. But Ultron also offered one of the most conceptually appealing villains in Marvel moviedom, and almost offhandedly created a hero, the Vision, unlike any of its predecessors. Are they not forgetting how cringe Quicksilver was? Are they not forgetting like how it felt like an ad for Black Panther, Thor Ragnarok, and a bunch of other movies? It was just so overstuffed. Such an overstuffed movie. I think even Joss Whedon would admit that Avengers Age of Ultron is not that good. It's not a good movie. And I do like the moments where they're just hanging out. Like there's a moment in the movie where they just decide to chill in Hawkeye's house. There's a moment in the movie where they're trying to lift Thor's hammer. And those are some clever little bits that Joss Whedon is also known for. But, I don't know, man. 15, Ant-Man and the Wasp. That movie, you ever watch Men in Black where they take the stick and erase people's memory? I think Ant-Man and the Wasp had one of those at the end of the movie. Because I automatically forgot the movie as soon as I left the theater. Captain America Civil War. I liked it. It was a bit dumb. You can pull it apart. A lot of logical fallacies in the movie. The main problem I had with the movie is that this whole time it's like this very dark political thriller. And then all of a sudden, like, Ant-Man shows up and he's giant and he's cracking jokes like, what is going on? And then Spider-Man is like, you remember in the movie Empire Strikes Back, that super old movie where you get to wrap the legs of the person and he falls on the floor? And I was just like, am I watching two different movies? It felt like, the first half felt like a political thriller. The second half just felt like a fan film. It was like a weird gear shift that I never quite made. I find myself much rathering the other Captain America movie, Winter Soldier. 13 Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I can get behind that. It's a fun time. It's cute. I really like the depressed Peter Parker. You know what's a scene in that movie? I was in the theater watching it with a friend, and she was getting embarrassed because I kept laughing at this scene, even when it changed scenes. When he's watching a seahorse, and he's like crying, and he's like, "Did you know seahorses have the same partners forever?" 12 Logan. 12 is probably the greatest Marvel movie ever made. Just how it really decides to do something different with the superhero genre and flip it on its head. I think there's two favorites in my head. The other favorite of mine didn't show up yet. But Logan is in 1 or 2 spot for my favorite Marvel movies. Outside of the MCU and inside of the MCU, that is. How it just deals with disease and coming like at the end of a hero's journey. And it's just like this one last mission. It feels very dark and violent. I like the music in it. Just everything about it felt very grizzled and it felt like a more character piece. A lot of people talk about how the Joker is like awesome and one of the greatest R-rated superhero movies, but I think Logan is the better movie. And I think Logan is ultimately going to go down as a classic. It really took a genre that was overplayed, done to death, and they did something really different with it. And I think that's the reason why some people like the Wolverine, and I'm not one of them. It's because I've seen it done better in Logan only a few years later. 11 Ant-Man. Really? Better than Logan? I don't know. Number 10, Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is not good. I refuse that hypothesis. It has great visuals, not much of a good story to it. It's the same story as Iron Man. In number 9, the original X-Men. Look, I like it. It's outdated as fuck. You know what happens to a toad that gets struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else. It's not a good movie. Some really shitty dialogue. Number 8, X-Men 2. What I notice about this list is that they'll often do like X-Men 1 and X-Men 2 back to back, or Fantastic Four 1 and the Fantastic Four 2 back to back, or they did Hulk and then the Incredible Hulk back to back. I feel like they didn't put much thought into it, perhaps. This is a troll move. This has to be a troll move. Captain Marvel number 7. More than any of her fellow Avengers, Captain Marvel begins her career as a mystery to herself in a throwback-style adventure setting up the hero who may be the most powerful of them all. A terrific performance by Brie Larson punches through the thick narrative of shape-shifting narratives and murky intergalactic war, very much giving the impression that the truly fun stuff is yet to come. That has to be a troll move. That's like, fuck the sexist trolls, man. I didn't even see Captain Marvel, but I'm willing to bet I don't like it more than Logan. I'm willing to bet that I don't like it more than Iron Man 3. I'm willing to bet that I don't like it more than X-Men Days of Future Past. Number 6, the original Spider-Man. Thank you. That's a dank movie. I rewatched it recently and it still holds up. Number 5, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. I feel like it's a little overrated. I think people got a little hyped because there's like that kind of Jason Bourne feel to it in a Captain America movie, which people weren't thinking of, but it really felt like a good idea. I don't think it's number 5 of all time. Am I wrong? Number 4, the original Iron Man. Listen, I rather Iron Man 3, but I think it's a fine enough movie. It falls apart at the end when Jeff Bridges decides to make an Iron Man costume. Other than that, it's a fine movie. I don't think it's number 4. Number 3, Black Panther. I've talked to death about Black Panther, but I don't think it's that good a movie. It's not. Here are the problems I have with Black Panther. Well, here's what I like about Black Panther is the Afrofuturism. That's what really works about the movie. I liked seeing Wakanda. It was fun. I love Wakanda. I want to live in Wakanda. It looks like a fun time. Here's what doesn't work about Black Panther. It's formulaic. It's the same movie as Doctor Strange, the original Iron Man. Follows a lot of the same beats you would see in maybe a Captain Marvel. I haven't seen Captain Marvel. It's just a very formulaic movie, and it doesn't really make it all that interesting. Chadwick Boseman does a great job in the movie. His character is a bit flat. Michael B. Jordan is great in the movie. He carries the movie, if anything. Here's the other thing that people forget about the movie. It's like Marvel didn't realize that people are there for the Afrofuturism. The movie decides to fuck off to South Korea halfway through the movie, and you're like, why? Why? I want to see Wakanda. The movie had great talents like Lupita Nyong'o. She doesn't really do anything in Black Panther. Daniel Kaluuya doesn't really do anything. Forrest Whitaker doesn't really do anything. It almost just felt like Marvel was flexing. Like, look at all these good talents we can have. Fighting CGI rhinos. Fighting in the subway at the end. It was bad. I think ultimately Black Panther will go down in history as a movie that was really needed during the time it came out. It came out around the Black Lives Matter movement. A lot of people had racial issues at the forefront of their minds. And here comes this big blockbuster movie that crosses the $1 billion mark and has a predominantly black cast. And Martin Freeman, who they should have cut out from the movie because he's uninteresting. But yeah, it will go down in history as that. That said, if we're just looking objectively at the movie, it's not that great a movie. I saw Wakanda Forever over the weekend. This is controversial. I thought Wakanda Forever was a much better movie. Much better movie. Because it wasn't confined to that generic Marvel structure. Because the lead unfortunately passed away, they had to start thinking outside the box. And I think that ultimately led for a more interesting movie. But that's just my opinion anyway. You know, I was talking... Here's the funny thing. I was talking with a friend of mine, but we're not really friends anymore. And you'll soon see why. But I was talking with a friend of mine about the movie Black Panther. And she said... We were talking about it, and I said, listen. I said basically what I just said. So many problems with the movie. Fuck, I wish they cut Martin Freeman out of these stupid Black Panther movies. He's so useless. Whenever he's on screen, I want to sleep really bad. And it just shows that Marvel is like, oh, we need to throw one white guy in there who's on the same team as the black people. If not, how are the white people gonna relate? As if people can relate to an old wrinkly ass like fucking Martin Freeman. I don't have anything against Martin Freeman. Anyway, so I'm talking with this girl about it. We get into this huge argument. Huge argument. And then she's like, oh, how can you be so insensitive? And yada, yada, yada. Nah, it is what it is. We're not really friends anymore, and probably because of that. This movie ruins friendships. Maybe that's the real reason why I don't like Black Panther. You know what she said? She said that the movie isn't made for you, implying that I'm unable to relate to an all-black cast. But that's my main issue with the movie, is like, I wish it had more of those elements of African culture. I wish the music felt more African, which is something that Wakanda Forever improves upon greatly. I thought the music in Wakanda Forever was way better. I wish it had more black culture in it, which, again, Wakanda Forever, you get more Wakanda in the movie. You also get more of the Waterland, I forget what it's called. But I thought that was pretty interesting as well. That's what I go into one of these movies to see, you know? I like the Dora Milaje, or whatever they call that. It's interesting to me. I feel like in this movie, the side characters had more to shine. I don't like the original Black Panther. I'll stand by it. Here's another problem I have with the original Black Panther before I stop, because I don't want to sound like I'm just railing on this movie. Again, I like the movie for what it represents. Just objectively, the movie is very flawed. But there's a part where the main character, T'Challa, quote-unquote, dies. And the audience knows he's not going to die, because he's going to be in Avengers Infinity War. So why did they have this whole moment where everyone thought he was dead? I don't know. Spider-Man 2 is number 2. I think it's the greatest superhero movie ever made, by far and away, because it wears it on its sleeve. I'm proud to be a superhero movie. And you know what? This is what I want superhero movies to do more often. I watched this movie when I was babysitting. I was babysitting a little boy. Believe it or not, I'm a very good babysitter. I just let kids eat hot dogs and ice cream, and then let them sleep on the couch because they have a sugar coma. It's very easy to babysit is what I realized. But anyway, we watched Spider-Man 2 one day. I wanted to rewatch the movie. I wanted to introduce this movie to this youngster. He probably never watched a superhero movie. He's about 8 years old. Didn't really grow up around that culture. Anyway, I show him Spider-Man 2, and when the movie ends, I do a social experiment. I asked this little kid, what do you think the moral of the movie was? And I was expecting him to say, don't be a bad guy, or some very simplistic message like that. And he said, sometimes being a hero means not doing the easiest thing. And I was like, damn, this message is such a universal message. Because when I watch the movie, I relate to that too. It must be hard to be a hero. And this Spider-Man guy, he's really good at it. And he's really fighting for it. And that's like something that connected with me when I was a kid, and something that connected with me now. And I'm watching this movie with an 8-year-old boy, and he caught on to that right away. And it's a level of depth I want to see with more superhero movies. Not just punchy, fighty the bad guy. Just a very deep conversation about what it means to be a hero. I need to applaud Sam Raimi for that, and it's for that reason that I think that Spider-Man 2 is the greatest, not even Marvel movie, greatest superhero movie ever made, because it touches upon that theme and does it in a way that's universal, that even a kid can understand it. It doesn't, I feel like movies nowadays, it's like, oh, we know it's a kid's movie, just make it simple, give them the explosions. This movie wanted to be ambitious in its themes. Number 1, The Avengers. I don't think The Avengers is the greatest superhero movie ever made, or Marvel movie for that matter. It's fun. I saw it in the theater. It kind of looked like a TV movie. The explosions were nice. Seeing them teamwork in New York City was fun. Better than Logan? No. Better than Spider-Man 2? No. I wouldn't even say it's better than Infinity War or Endgame. Not better than Winter Soldier. Not better than Into the Spider-Verse. Dare I even say, I think it's like neck and neck with Black Panther, even though I just railed on Black Panther. I think Black Panther is ultimately a fine movie. I think Wakanda Forever is slightly better. I think Avengers is around that area. I'm just like, yeah, it's fine. I think the only thing is that there's a huge zeitgeist around Black Panther and not so much the original Avengers. There is a big zeitgeist around the original Avengers, but I think people are aware that it's maybe not a perfect movie. But it kind of felt like when the Flintstones meet the Jetsons, or when you buy like a video game and it's like the Nicktoon All-Stars and SpongeBob can fight Patrick and Ren and Stimpy and Powdered Toast Man and all of these crazy characters in one. It was like the first movie from my generation anyway to really do that and wear it on its sleeve. So I get why people like it, but again, like what I said with Black Panthers, if you look what the movie is objectively, it's not that great a movie. Alright, that's the show. We went through the list. It was pretty awful. It kind of gave me cancer, unfortunately, so I may not be back for the next episode. I'm just kidding. Don't joke about cancer, Paul. That's not nice. Alright, I'll see you guys around. Take care. Love you.